Good evening. My name is Laura Eccles-Richter. I'm one of the pastors here at Grace Avenue, and I'm glad you're here because it's good to gather together. We don't have a lot of answers for things, but one of the things that we know is when we come together in one another's presence, that we can sit with and that we can find tools and find a way forward. And that's really, as I was grieving this past week, I was beginning to try to find that way forward to navigate this. And what I realized is that I don't always have all the tools that I need to be able to do that. And so I turned to some people who often help me, and that is people who are professional counselors who deal with trauma. And so I was very thankful on Monday as we reached out to Jennifer Brad at Planting Seeds Counseling and Coaching and just said, we have space. Will you partner with us and come and offer your wisdom and come and help us be together? And so Jen immediately said, definitely. And we quickly found this evening. And we know this is only a beginning of an ongoing journey with one another, but I am so very thankful for partnerships like we have with planting seeds in our community. And so I am thankful for you to be here. There is space in our sanctuary if you need to go and just have time for quiet or prayer this evening or in the future. Our prayer room is open 24 hours a day. And so just know that there are safe places to come and just be present. And there are prayer shawls there. If there's someone you know that is especially having a hard time and you'd like to take them something just to know that they're wrapped in grace and love right now, those are all available as well. But for tonight, we gather in this space and we are thankful for the counselors from Planting Seeds. So will you please welcome them at this time?
Thank you all for being here. I'm Jennifer, and these two amazing ladies are people that I am blessed to work with every single day. This is Tara Wiedemeyer, who has been around for a long time and is also co-owner with me, and this is Amanda Young. They both work with primarily teens and adults. We all have felt the calling in our lives to specialize in trauma, so we are humbled to be here and to share this time with you all tonight, and we are hopeful that there's maybe even one takeaway that helps calm nervous systems that we know are very activated right now, ours included. We started our day this morning with some prayer time just for us because we are grieving just like you guys are. This is the community that we love as well. You were given index cards. If there are questions that you want to ask but you're not comfortable asking out loud, feel free to write them on there. We also were going to ask that you write down what has been the primary thought in your head since Saturday and what is it that you are most afraid of. And then we will collect those and share a few of those things so that you don't have to say them yourself, but it's helpful to know that we are not alone in our thoughts and our fears. So that's what those cards are for. I don't know if there's anyone in this room tonight that was in Allen on Saturday. When we start talking about things like this, there can be what we call triggers. It's helpful to understand what a trigger is, I think. It makes it feel maybe a little less scary and overwhelming. And so when we experience a traumatic event, our brain's only goal is survival, which means all of the processes that integrate a memory and kind of date and time stamp and help us understand that that memory is in the past, they're all offline. And the bits and pieces of data that are present during that event become disintegrated or fragmented. And so you'll hear, our war veterans say a loud sound, a firework, the sound of a gunshot is triggering because the brain has not integrated all of those pieces of data. And so it hears that sound or the smell or sees something that was present during that event. And all it knows is the last time that it heard or smelled or saw that, your life was in danger. And so it immediately takes people back there. So we wanted to start today with a grounding practice, just to help everybody remember we're safe in this space today. You guys are safe in here. We're not going to ask you to do anything that would leave you feeling uncomfortable at all. So Amanda's going to lead you guys through it. If you want to have them.
So some of the ways that we can calm our nervous system down, it's a tool that we utilize all the time with clients and even utilize it personally. So what we can start off by doing is I would recommend, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. You can rest your hands over your heart, one hand over your heart, just reminding yourself, like Jennifer put, that we are safe in this place. And I'm just going to kind of guide you through a simple breathing exercise, okay? So everybody take your deep breath and breathe in connection. Breathe out divided. Breathe in clear. Breathe out distorted. Breathe in wise. Breathe out risky. Breathe in calm. Breathe out fear. Breathe in safety. Breathe out withdrawal. Breathe in hope. Breathe out futility. Breathe in curiosity. Breathe out judgment. Breathe in peaceful. And breathe out anxious. Breathe in loving and breathe out hatred. Just for now, breathe. Breathe and breathe. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. All righty. So we wanted to start with just kind of some definitions. So our first one, how do we understand loss? Most of us understand loss through death, but we are experiencing a lot of different kinds of losses right now.
So when we deal with loss, again, a lot of people automatically tie that to death, but it can be so much more. So we've got a primary loss. A lot of times you can have secondary losses. But when you have the loss of safety or loved ones or a sense of security, that counts, because it's essentially, in a lot of ways, it's still very much like a death. So this talks about, it can be real or material, abstract, imagined or perceived, a loss of a relationship, an intrapsychic, functional, loss of a role, systemic loss, threatened loss, ambiguous loss, and disenfranchised. And so when we've got all of this going on in our society and in our culture across the nation, especially when it's in your own backyard, even if you weren't there, you don't know someone who is involved, it can still be disruptive to our systems. It can, again, you can have these losses even if, again, you don't have firsthand experience with it. And so especially if you've got kiddos that you have to send to school every day, or you're a teacher, there's a disruption to our sense of self, our security, our safety, and that doesn't oftentimes, I don't think, get called out enough and validated enough. And so people feel very alone in that. They don't know how to talk about it. But as a whole right now, we are very much in that space. And so it can feel very much like grieving for a lot of people. And so I think it's very important that we check in on ourselves, each other, and tend to those things, talk about them, connect with people, because we're not wired to walk through this kind of stuff by ourselves. We're not meant to. And when we have a community, and we're going to get more into this later, but when we have a community and support, that's very anchoring and healing and supportive to our whole system.
Awesome, thanks. All right, trauma is a buzzword right now, so let's talk about what it really is. Anytime that there is some sort of injury, again, that doesn't have to be just a physical injury. Body, mind, spirit, an injury to any of those that is real or perceived. So a lot of times what we hear in circumstances like this is, why do I feel this way? I wasn't there. But you can see yourself there. Most of us have probably been to Allen outlet malls. Most of us have been to Stonebriar on the heels of Allen. Then we had that evacuation, and then we had the threat for all of our FISD students the very next day. And so we can see it in our mind's eye. Our brain doesn't really care half the time if we actually experienced it or our brain imagines it. Our body's still going to respond. And so just understanding that, no, you're not crazy, and it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong if you're having these symptoms and you weren't physically present at the time. Any event that overwhelms our central nervous system, kind of the key indicators of trauma are overwhelm and a sense of helplessness. Who feels helpless right now? I mean, we've talked about it since this happened. We don't know what to do. And so being left alone with overwhelm and helplessness can lead to having symptoms of trauma. So I think it's helpful for us to understand when we use that word, what are we really talking about? And now we've got this collective trauma. So everything we just talked about, but it's shared and it's on a larger scale. I don't know that anyone would argue that this is another in a long line in recent years of collective traumas, which I think is why we want to be here and do this and educate and open conversations. We got to start healing at some point. And I don't know that we have had the opportunity to do that yet. Will you go ahead and put up the next one? So these are, this little graph is based on what happens in communities when there is trauma. We first started using this in 2020. And I think that we probably haven't made it very far in this progression because we've had kind of domino traumas. And so right now, post-Allen, everybody's still in that very first, we're in sudden impact. What does this mean? What do we tell our kids? How do we have conversations about it? If I'm someone that wants to get involved, how do I even do that? So from this past weekend perspective, that's where we are. From the last 3.5 years perspective, we're probably in that disillusionment phase, which the combination of those two things is going to leave all of us feeling much more dysregulated because there's just a lot of conflict. The disillusionment phase is where we typically see that, and now we've got more traumas on top of that. And it's really hard for us to calm our nervous systems down.
Can I piggyback on that?
Absolutely.
So when we've got these stacked events and mass violence circumstances and these traumas, if you don't have the time or space or tools to heal and fully process that, and then another one happens, and then another one happens, it just makes this whole thing even more complex. And so people, we're pretty resilient, right, by design, but our systems can only take so much. And so, you might have been okay up until Nashville. We could drop all these different names and times because there's been so many. And then the last several have just felt so much more intense or overwhelming, and that can happen too. But so when there's these stacked, events and traumas where there's no resolve, there's no healing, it makes this process, this journey, even more complex. And again, I don't like to measure things by time when we're talking about healing, but we could have been maybe further along had it been one isolated event, right? But because it's boom, 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 it's just so much harder to deal with. And then it causes, again, when there's this conflict politically, and I would even say spiritually, and just all of these different things, and people are in all these different camps, it hinders the process and the progress.
So these are the things that we would expect to see for you, for your kids, for your grandkids, for your neighbors. These are normal symptoms. I'm going to say that again. These are normal symptoms. So I'm not going to read them all to you. People will come to us post-traumatic event feeling like they need, every mental illness label in the DSM. And we pull out something like this, and this is true for mass violence, but it's true for pretty much any traumatic event. And you can watch relief flood their systems. I'm not broken. My body is actually doing what it's supposed to do. My world fell apart. And for all of us, our foundation has been completely rattled. These are things that happen when our foundation is rattled, and we've got to start to rebuild and find sturdy ground again. So if you're experiencing any of these things, your kids are experiencing any of these things, what we typically tell people is for the initial 3 to 4 weeks, that acute phase, it takes that long for our brains to kind of assimilate what has happened. If it goes beyond that, that's when we want you to give us a call. Because 20% of people will develop a post-traumatic stress response. We don't view it as a disorder. Your body did what it was supposed to do. It just gets stuck there. And there are ways to unstick it. Yes. So I tell everyone when they first come in, if you're within that first 3 to 4 weeks, we expect these things. And so we don't want to be telling ourselves, this is never going to get better, there's something wrong with me, all of those things. Even beyond that, we don't want to tell ourselves that, but that's when give us a call, or someone a call. Okay, so we have found that it is very helpful for people to understand state of nervous system when we are in the recovery process. We use this even with our elementary school kiddos. They love it. Teenagers love it. Our adults love it because the things that are happening to me are not my fault. They're my brain and my body doing what God designed them to do. So this is in the form of a ladder. We also talk about it from a window of tolerance language. When you're at the top of your ladder, you're in your window of tolerance. What that means is my brain is wired for connection. I want to be social. I want to be around people. I'm still an introvert or an extrovert. I mean, there's wide variety there, but my brain is wired for safety and connection when I am at the top of my ladder. When I am in my sympathetic nervous system, I'm going to be in that yellow phase. That's where we hear fight, flight, freeze. That's going to be the fight or flight. How many of you have felt like maybe possibly the last 4 days you've been in your sympathetic nervous system? I know I have. And I am more of a fighter than a fleer, which means I'm going to be edgy, irritable, angry. So someone cuts me off in traffic, I might have a stronger reaction than is normal for me. Or, if my kids were still at home and there was a tone, because I have daughters, I might react to that, whereas otherwise it wouldn't bother me at all. That's how I know, I'm not okay. I'm not at the top of my ladder. I need to take care of me so that I can show up differently for the people that I love. The bottom of the ladder, I don't know about y'all, but this is what I have seen more this week. This is where, for possums, the collapse. It's also for us where we want to just kind of hide from the world. We want to run away. We want to numb. This is where people will self-medicate. I have seen this more this week than anything else. People they don't have any bandwidth left.
They don't know what to do, and we start to shut down when we stay in that state long enough where we feel helpless and overwhelmed. So
Yes.
And again, when there's one thing alone can do it, but again, multiple things stacked on top of each other, and it's like fighting big pharma. What do we do as these little individual people who want to affect change and keep our kids safe? And it's like, all right, I'm just gonna. It's becoming commonplace, and that is terrible and disgusting, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. Our goal is never to always be at the top of the ladder. Our goal is to know, where am I, and how do I care for myself in the state that I'm in. So the example that I will often use is, if I don't sleep well, maybe I get out of bed late, I'm already going to be not in prime form, right? Let's say I get a speeding ticket on the way to work, so then I'm late for my first session. Cortisol's dumping in my system with every single one of these little micro stressors in just a normal day. I have horrible sessions. Somebody's angry and yelling at me. If that continues, by the time I get home, I'm probably going to be in my dorsal vagal, disconnect, disappear. If I have awareness of that, what that frees me up to do is high five my husband. It's been a really crappy day. I'm going to go take a time out in the bedroom for 20 minutes, or I'm going to go for a walk, and then I can come back and kind of reset. That is a normal day. We aren't living normal days right now. And so we got to learn how to take care of ourselves. This is that whole, when the masks come down on the airplane, put it on you first. Because the more we try to stay focused on the other people in our lives without understanding where we are, then, especially with our little people, they're going to react to where we are in our nervous system. So, do y'all have questions about this, comments? Where do you think you've been? Where are you right now, sitting in this space?
It's a good question. Generally, I would say that middle yellow area, you can have, anger is an appropriate normal emotion, right? You can have it kind of anywhere on this ladder, but when we, especially rage or that short fuse, it would be that middle ground. Yeah. But anger is not a bad thing. Right. I think anger gets a really bad rap. It doesn't feel good all the time. Sometimes it actually feels really good. But it can be motivating, but again, it's appropriate to what we're experiencing. And so to avoid it or repress it or deny it doesn't help. And so I would even say to that, get angry. You don't want to be harmful to yourself or others with it, right? But emotions ebb and flow. They come and go. They're temporary. And we're emotional beings. And so get angry. If you want to do something productive with it, great. But even acknowledging and identifying, I feel this way, it will pass eventually. Now it's staying around longer, I think, these days, because again, we feel so helpless. But it's not a negative thing. And I think when we even sometimes just acknowledging, this is how I feel, it makes sense, can tamper that a little bit, but it's self-validating for sure. But if we can regulate our own selves with your grandkids, it helps them regulate themselves, because until they're able to do that on their own, they're looking at all of us for cues and like what we foster in them and model for them, that's how they're going to learn how to hang out on this ladder, you know? And so, but it's infuriating. And so, I mean, we don't have answers to how to fix this other than how to care for ourselves and our kiddos, hopefully. But, I mean, I'm right there with you. Like, I want to throw things. I might have, so already.
Well, I was going to say I can completely relate to that too, and feeling that anger. For sure on Sunday, I was I couldn't control my emotions. My husband was encouraging me, like, you need to eat something. And I'm like, I don't want to eat. Like, why has this happened again? And hearing, people's stories and seeing the footage. And so one of the things that helps us with this, with kind of identifying where we're at on this ladder, we can then incorporate some of the tools that we can do to help kind of regulate. So for instance, for me on Sunday, when I was feeling very angry and very agitated, my husband, who's a good counselor husband, he reminded me, like, Amanda, turn off the TV, let's stop watching that for a little while, put down your phone, set the phone across the room, because I was checking every 10 minutes, like, do they have a victim list up? Do we know who it was? And, looking for all of those details and just really being hyper vigilant. But I knew I needed to tap into my self-care so that I could regulate my nervous system. And so I was very blessed to have a husband who could remind me in that moment to set the phone aside across the room. So little tools like that, and remembering, like, maybe I'll go put the phone in the other room with my wife or my grandbaby and put it in the other room and just take a break, or let's turn off the TV, or let's just find a good movie to watch, something that really kind of just helps us calm down. It's not suppressing what we feel, but it's definitely just gonna just calm that nervous system down where we're thinking more clearly. And then when we are thinking clearly, we can think about maybe actionable items or things that we can do, or conversations that we can have, or people that we can network with, and that does help us feel a little more in control. But also, I think it's really important to acknowledge the pieces that we can't control, right? Mm-hmm. Like, those are the things that can really kind of ramp us up. And so no matter if we're talking about something this huge, or even something like throughout our day, kind of doing a filter, like, let me make a little mental list. What can I control? What can I not control, right? And the things that we can't control, really releasing those things to God. We talk a lot about that, but do we do it, right? It's like, we'll say it in prayer sometimes, and oftentimes what I remind clients of is we get down on our knees and we're praying and we're leaning over to God and we're saying, it's here for you, God, and we trust you with it. But then we get back up and we kind of sometimes pick it back up and carry it with us and think, well, maybe I actually can fix this. And so just reminding ourselves what control we have and what we don't have control over. Again, just calming self-talk, utilizing tools that we have, like I said, putting your phone on silent, setting it across the room, changing the channel, limiting how much coverage we're watching. All of these things are simple things, but hard to remember when we're feeling really, really frustrated. So writing these things down, like we call them, I can call them our little tool belt of things, we can do next time we're feeling triggered. So I just wanted to add that.
Awesome, thank you.
And on top of that too, because you stated this, when we're out of our window of tolerance, that green part, we're not going to be thinking rationally and objectively. We are, again, in survival mode, or like this shutdown, like essentially sometimes even give up mode. We're just super withdrawn. And so when we're in the yellow and red sections, that is not the time to be trying to make long-term plans or take next steps, because a lot of times those are not going to be the most productive or helpful. So we need to calm our nervous system down, or if you're dealing with your kiddos, they need to get back into their window of tolerance and be cool, calm, and collected before they can even have a conversation, so they can learn from it or really even hear what you're saying sometimes, depending on the context of what we're talking about. So everything shifts when we're outside of that green space.
practice.
Yeah. This
I mean,
is not easy.
No.
But even that, like recognizing like this is not normally how I act. And in that moment, again, you're not thinking super rationally, right? But once you get them home, fed, you can take some space from that. Like checking in with yourself, what do I need? Like tending to that, right? So what do I need to, like if I'm feeling frustrated, what can I do to like tend to that? If I'm feeling sad, if I'm feeling what? And then doing something to honor where you're at. So maybe that's screaming in your pillow. Maybe that's having a good old ugly cry. Maybe that's working out and moving your body. Maybe that's, pray. Like so many things. The list is endless. But I would just say try things on for size and see what you need in those moments. But it is not a one size fits all. But when you have, and Jen talked about this, but like when we have these responses that are not our normal, that makes sense. That's going to happen. But we don't want to show up, especially with our kids, like that. And so giving yourself space and grace to tend to what you need to do so you can show up for your kids the way you want to, it's messy.
Can I add to that a little bit?
Yeah.
I was going to say too, like you were saying, how do we know? And so what I teach clients, like from the very beginning, is let's start to take an example like that, and let's say, what were the kind of warning signs that started to happen before we got to the feeling really irritable? And most of the time, we will notice ooh, my heart was really racing, or I was kind of feeling some heaviness in my chest, or my body was starting to tense up. And so really paying attention to what we call those warning signs. And that's kind of telling us we're kind of coming down on the ladder a little bit. And so those are things we can start to watch for. So just growing your awareness of what's happening in your own body will then better help you to say ooh, okay, I'm coming down that ladder pretty quickly. And maybe, whether it's a husband or a friend, and say, I need to tag out for just a second, go to the bathroom, run some cold water on your hands, splash some water on our faces, do some breathing exercises, right? Like just calming that nervous system down. Putting your hand over your heart is always a really simple way. Just doing some deep breathing, tapping into those tools when we're noticing kind of those warning signs can help us. Sometimes there's not a ton of warnings. Sometimes it can feel like a gut punch. What happened on Saturday obviously was definitely something that could cause that gut punch. But if we do the work also beforehand, right? Because like Tara was saying, when we're in this crisis place and when we're not feeling connected, it's really hard to be like, uh-oh, I'm down that ladder and I'm spitting fire. But if we watch for those warning signs along the way and become more aware of how we respond, and then start paying attention, a good little tool just to add is that we can start paying attention to what our spouse is like. Uh-oh, he's down here on that ladder right now. So let's not have that deep conversation about, whatever, next week's bills or what have you, if he's had a long day. Or our kiddos too, because oftentimes we forget they're going through a lot too, even without all the traumas, right? Even if that's limited, just their days sometimes can be, a full-time job. So just trying to be aware and paying attention to what's happening into our bodies is a good little warning sign that tells you kind of where you're at and where you're headed. And when you need to tap into that self-care, that can hopefully then will bring you back up that ladder a little bit.
And when you catch it even afterwards, because people get frustrated, especially when they start doing this type of work, but as long as you catch it, that counts. And the more you pay attention, you grow your awareness, you're going to start catching it sooner and sooner. And then eventually it's and you can turn it around before you're at the bottom of the ladder. But that takes time and practice. And again, if you don't have, not you, but in general, if we don't have the resources or the space in between to catch our breath and ground ourselves, heal, all the things, and here comes the next thing or the next stressor or trigger or trauma, it
gets harder.
It does. It gets more packed down.
It gets a lot harder. A couple things on that. Relationally, repair is the most important part. We're humans. We're going to step on each other's toes. We're going to have bad days. We're going to yell at our kids. the repair is, I think, the critical element. So you felt something about how you showed up for your child. Letting them know, what was that like for you? Mommy didn't mean to yell at you. Beginning to use this language in the home. Mommy wasn't in her window of tolerance. Kids love it when we tell on ourselves, but it's also giving them permission to do the same. And so I think that is really important. Why we're spending so much time on this, you guys, is every single one of these perpetrators, had they been raised like this, would not have ended up doing what they did. We can talk about all the polarizing subjects, but at the heart is, if we have secure, healthy attachments and we know what to do with our feelings, we're not going to get a gun and go kill people. And so when you feel helpless, know that if you're doing this in your home, you are making a difference. You are changing the next generation. And that can have beautiful ripple effects. So it's very powerful. I mean, we get to witness the power of it every single day. Not everyone has that honor, quite honestly, but you guys can in your own homes. And then you're sending those kids that know how to do this out into the world. My favorite things that I get to hear are when 4- and 5-year-olds remind their parents that maybe they're activated, and would they like to use a calm down tool. Love it, love it, love it. A couple of things about calming ourselves down. We have 3 cathartic releases: hitting, yelling, crying. We are hardwired to do those 3 things to release big feelings. They're all okay as long as they're not harmful to self or other or property. Tears, we're not going to make those gender specific. It's like putting salve on a burn. That's what it does to our brain. So if you live with a crier or you are a crier, we want to stop stigmatizing that. It is a beautiful thing. In that moment, all that human being is doing is trying to reintegrate their brain. So we want to just sit in that space with them. Hitting, I'm a hitter. Love heavy bags. One of my favorite things. When it's heavy bag day at the gym, it's my favorite day. So if you have a hitter, how can they hit without getting in trouble and hurting themselves or someone else? A really good thing is the packing peanuts or cotton balls. I can throw those until I literally break a sweat and nothing's going to get broken. That's like hitting. It's that release. If I'm a yeller, I can go in my room and yell as long as I'm not like verbally attacking someone. We need to create spaces where these behaviors aren't wrong. Because when we communicate that these behaviors are wrong, all of that cortisol is staying stuffed inside and building up. And what we now know is that shrinks the part of our brain that drives us to connect socially. And we end up where we are today. So that is why we are spending so much time on this, is this can make a big difference in how we show up in our world.
And this is a daily thing for every human, trauma and mass violence aside. Like, this is something that we can use daily, even on a good day.
Yes. All right, the next one, because a lot of people are in here with kids in mind. These are some statements that kids have uttered post some sort of community violence. I'll read through them because I don't know if y'all can see all those, or do you want to?
Sure. I don't know who to trust anymore. I'm more tempted to get drunk or high to them at all. And they may not even verbally say that. You might just see those behaviors. I don't feel safe at home or safe away from home. They may get a little more clingy or attached. I feel angry even when nobody's messing with me or hasn't made a direct threat. I'm on edge all the time, like something's going to happen, and I can't be caught off guard. I get jumpy or nervous at the smallest thing or the littlest sounds. So some of these are speaking to that hypervigilance that we just talked about. I don't expect to graduate from school. I'll probably die young anyway. So a lot of kids are not even afraid to make plans for the future. They don't even think about it now, is what we're seeing, which is heartbreaking. I just can't stop thinking about all the violence and how it's never going to end.
When we were putting this together, what was in my head was a lot of those have been in my head. So this isn't just for our kids. This is for all of us. I think my response would be, it depends on what that kiddo is seeing on their phone. Because a lot of parents, well, that's actually a really big question that you asked. They can be influenced by whatever their parents are, how they're behaving, what their nervous systems are doing. Our kids co-regulate with us. Their brains don't know how to regulate, so they use ours. That happens a lot. I don't know that there are very many kids that don't think about this right now. They may just not be talking about it, and if they're not reacting, is it because like they're numb? Like there was one that I spent some time with today who was very neutral, and I said, just tell me what's in your head, which is a beautiful way to engage a teenager, by the way. And he said, well, I'm not worried right now because I could outrun them. So that's the logic, right? That's how he's telling himself that he's going to be safe. What was in my head was maybe not a bullet, but that would then have been my nervous system influencing his nervous system. And so he had gotten himself to the top of his ladder by believing he could have run away had he been there.
Well, and when kids are making exit plans or checking their surroundings all the time, that can calm them in a sense, but the fact that they even have to do that shows
they're thinking about it.
Yeah. So I think, my own kiddos, 9 and almost 13, they've grown up like this. Hold, please.
We feel it too.
And it is so normalized. And when I checked on them after Saturday, we had a conversation, they seemed unbothered. And you could see it in their face, like, not again, kind of thing. And we talk very openly in my house about this stuff because I want to be the one that's informing them so I know what they're learning and hearing. We don't watch the news. And they're very sensitive, but they still, there's this, it's almost like a callousness in a lot of ways, but I know it breaks their hearts because when we talk about it, they dig deep, or something comes up contextually, like I see that. But if somebody that didn't know them well or really spend time talking about this, they would look at them and think they're fine. They're not fine. But again, if you grow up seeing and experiencing things, it becomes normal, even if it's not healthy, even if it's not okay, even if it's traumatic. And that's one of my fears and my own limitations is we're raising up this generation right now who it's shaping them in ways that we would never, ever want. This is not the world we wanted to pass on. And we can do everything in our power, which is very small, like that list, like Amanda was talking about, like the in control, out of control. What we can actually control is a lot shorter than the other list. And that is, as a parent, not a fun, comfortable place to live, but it is what it is. And so I think, to your question, I think a lot of kiddos care, and it's impacting them in ways that a lot of us if we're not paying attention or we don't know what to look for, we're not having these conversations, we're going to miss it. And I think that can be more harmful because it's going to shape how they see the world, and their neuroception is going to be already, I think, is so skewed because they're scanning for threats all the time when we never had to do that in certain capacities. So. Sure. I mean, I think kids can handle the truth on an age-appropriate level.
Yes.
And it's well-intentioned, but what I think we as parents get wrong a lot of times is we try to shield them from so much, and then they don't know how to handle hard truths, or how to regulate when things are difficult and they're falling down the rungs of their ladder, right? So I think be honest on a very age-appropriate level, so watching your language, again, what they're exposed to, not using graphic language, and trying to protect them. I think imagery is a big thing. I'm sure a lot of you did. You can see what happened on Saturday. There's a video of it. It's
Don't watch it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So if they have access to certain things, parameters around that, but again, there's ways to get around that stuff, right? But anytime we have imagery to go with a memory or, not a memory, an event or information, it can complicate things a lot of times, and they keep seeing it, and that's the stuff they can start ruminating over and having bad dreams and all the things. So if you can protect them from the imagery piece, or by your own verbiage, don't lay it out like you would if you're telling a nighttime story and you want to be very detailed. That's not what we're talking about. Less is more here, maybe a little bit. But I think, again, us starting the conversation so we can guide it, and we also know what they're getting, like I said, and a lot of times they're going to hear before we have time to get to them and share this. And so we have to do a little bit of backpedaling there maybe, right, or repair work. But I think if we can acknowledge it and start it and let them we say what we need to say. Do you have any questions? What are you thinking? Do you have thoughts or feelings about this? Do you need a break? Just checking in on them, letting them lead it, because a lot of times parents are like, oh, I've got to get all this out and regurgitate this information really quickly, and it might be too much too fast, or it's not going to meet them where they're at. So I think that's one thing. Reassuring them that they are safe, generally speaking, and that's getting harder. Even when you look at the stats and all the things that, when we were doing research on this and stuff, it's school shootings are rare, mass shootings are rare. No, they're not. It's getting closer and closer to home, right? It is home. And so I can't promise them that they're going to be safe. I'm a crier, sorry. So I'd like to blame their sensitivity on their father, but they get it from me. But I can't promise them that they're going to be safe, but I can promise them that I'm going to do everything I can to keep them safe, and when they're home, they're going to be safe, but that their teachers are safe, the adults in their life are safe, and if they feel scared, they have questions, you're not around to answer those. Here's some people that you can go to, kind of thing. But again, community matters more now than ever. It always matters, but helping them find anchors in people, I think, is so vital. I think just hear them out and let them, if they feel like talking, let them talk. If they don't, cool. Go back and play in your room. If you want to come and ask me questions later, at any time you can. But leading with love and empathy and letting them know, some of the stuff that we talked about, it's normal to feel scared. It's normal to have questions. It's normal if you woke up and had a bad dream, those kinds of things. And that's, back to several screens ago where it talked about all the different areas of our whole system, our whole person. we might see these dysregulations and this dysfunction, or I don't want to call it dysfunction for this because
The symptom.
the symptoms and this, like, the new irregularities in so many things, and they're not all going to happen at once either, you know? So, but like normalizing where they're at, I think is so, so important. But sometimes, like, if our kids are struggling or they're scared, it can trigger us. And then again, they feed off of us, and then we've got them, like, they're having an anxiety attack because we lost our cool or we got out of our window of tolerance, you know? And so I hope that answers some of that.
Back row, yes, ma'am. Because our littles, draw me a picture of what's in your head. Like, color me the story. That's a way for us to, like, have a quick view. And is whatever they draw typical of what they usually draw? I would say with our preteens and teens, you know your kids best, but checking back in. Mm-hmm. Also, it's okay for us to not be okay, and communicating that. When I feel, anxious or uncertain, me sharing that makes it okay for them to share that. So I have parents often who will, they don't want to cry in front of their kids after a significant loss. All you're doing is teaching your child it's not okay to cry. And so I think we can sometimes be the barrier because we feel like we have to have it together all the time, but really what we want to do is show them what it means to be human. And all of those emotions are part of the human experience. Our job is to teach them how to sit with them, process them, manage them so those emotions aren't driving. That's when we get into trouble.
And it shows them, like, I'm not okay right now, but it's not going to stay that way too. Like, I can get regulated. This is going to turn around. And that shows them too, like, when I feel like that instills hope, and hope is vital, always, but again, now more than ever.
Figure out with your kids, some respond much better to how are you feeling about this? Some respond much better to what are you thinking about this? So, pay attention when they're telling you about their day. Do they narrate with thought or do they narrate with emotion? And when you're checking in with them, use their language. Mm-hmm. I can watch a kid, if I get it wrong, wall goes up. Next time, if I go the other route, I can't make them be quiet. So those little things, I would never ask a child why. Puts all of us on the defensive. Tell me more about who, what, when, where. Hopes, wishes, dreams, fears, those are good places to check in with our kids. What do you hope tomorrow's like at school? What are you afraid tomorrow might be like at school? Be curious with them, and then they'll let you in. We just got to kind of figure out their language and help them feel safe. What we don't want to do is, if we find out that they're sad, scared, mad, whatever it is, try to fix it for them. These are feel it moments, not fix it moments. The second we try to fix it, they're going to disconnect from us.
Well, and stuff like this, it can't be fixed.
Yeah.
So we're just spinning our wheels, and they can smell that a mile away.
Yes, they're smart little boogers. All right, the next slide has some words for you guys to use. This has been really scary. It makes sense that you feel that way if they do open up. Feeling scared is a way your brain helps to protect you from danger. So especially right now, it makes sense that we're scared. One of my young adults was leaving town, and we had to get something for her dog on Sunday, and where we were going was down by the mall. And I said, "How you doing?" And she said, "I'm feeling really nervous about being down here." Sit in the parking lot, kind of scan, what's your body telling you, teaching them to check in, walk to the store, what's your body telling you? I don't see anything that looks like a threat. Like teaching them, and if this is not something that you do, giving yourself permission. There's so much wisdom in our bodies that we have been taught to ignore and disconnect from because I don't know about y'all, when I was growing up, it was be respectful, be polite, speak when you're spoken to, yes ma'am, yes sir, to everyone, whether they have earned it or not. That translates to shut everything down that your body's telling you. Our wisdom is in our bodies. And so we can help our kids start to reconnect there. We can help ourselves start to reconnect there. Yeah, you are not alone. I am here for you. But a big element of trauma is not always just what happens to me, but being left alone with what has happened to me, which is why we are encouraging you initiate the conversation. If your household has not been one where that is the norm and you don't have the anything goes at the kitchen table, start now. But you guys are going to have to initiate because you're changing the rules. And let them know that it's okay. Have safe zones. They can say whatever. Even if historically it might have been offensive, they need to know they can say whatever. It won't always feel this way. Some things will get better. Other things will still be hard, but might not be as hard as they are right now. That is one of the most honest statements we can make right now. It feels really hard right now. I mean, this week for us, we've just been talking about how heavy and burdened life feels right now. We know that will get better, but we also know, without a miracle, it's probably not going to disappear, right? I think people are getting tired to the point that maybe we're going to start acting. So there's hope in that for me personally. The more people I hear angry and wanting change, that leaves me feeling hopeful. Because we need to unite our voices for our kiddos. And quite honestly, they're pretty angry at us that we haven't. Mm-hmm. We get to hear that a lot. Even though you feel scared, you are not in danger. You're safe right now. In our homes, we can guarantee them, you are safe right now. So reminding them where they can kind of let their guard down. Where can you let your guard down? And then the last one here, if we're out in public and you need me to know you're not okay, what can you do or say so that I will know that you need my support or that we need to leave? Again, trauma is about feeling helpless. This is a way that we're giving them some power back, giving ourselves some power back. How do I know when I need to leave? How does my body communicate that to me? And am I paying attention to what she's saying? All right, our goal is collective resilience because we have experienced collective trauma. What that is how well are we doing as these different systems, families, organizations, and communities in coping with and bouncing back from adversity? Where we've been talking about this pile up, this is where it gets hard, right? We've never recovered from COVID. And there's just been if we're talking a hamburger, it's a big old hamburger that nobody's going to be able to take a bite out of. And so starting small in these ways that we're giving you guys tools to do tonight, starting with your own body, starting with your nervous system, then your kids' nervous systems, working in that system inside your home, then friends, neighbors, how do we let our system then impact that next layer and that next layer? That's how we start to develop this resilience that we desperately need. That's also really helpful in the long-term stuff. We can prevent the long-term stuff by doing this. All right. What does it mean to have adaptive capacity in families and communities? You want to take that one?
Sure. It's the ability to make meaning through getting involved. And we have a handout back there, by the way. I don't know if y'all have seen this. There's several different cool things, but there's some bullet points on ways to like show support or get involved, and some websites even. Because again, when we fill that list is really short of what we can control, but things that how we choose to show up, where we give our time, our money, our resources, we do have control in that. And it also helps with regulation and feeling empowered. It's the ability to remain hopeful, transcendent thinking, flexibility as opposed to rigidity, connectedness to others both within the family and within the community, clear, open, emotional expression, and collaborative problem solving. And going back to that ladder graphic, when we're in our window of tolerance, we can do this stuff. When we're not, we can't. And so going back to the analogy of putting on the oxygen mask first, if we are taking care of ourselves and then those in our home, we can take that further and further into the community and heal as a whole, but it's got to start within us before we can try and do some of this stuff. And there's a lot of healing that needs to happen.
So this list, think about how many of these are true for within your home, within your place of business. Can you influence the implementation of any of these characteristics in the systems that you participate in with regularity? Then you're a change maker. You are then helping people become more resilient. Resilient, connected, well-attached people do not pick up a gun and go shoot people. All right, questions that you guys might have.
Does anybody have index cards they want to give us?
So while they're picking those up, a couple things. You're in the Chick-fil-A line, your kids are freaking out. You want to like reach back and throat punch them. Not that I've ever felt that way. If you are like not actively driving, right hand goes in left armpit with some pressure. Left hand goes on right arm. I am squeezing. This is called the containment hold. Very soothing to my nervous system. So everybody practice for a minute.
Unless you're wearing a tank top. Just kidding.
Left armpit, right hand, left armpit, left hand on your right arm, and squeeze. That's going to help me. I'm telling my body, we got this. We can hover at the top of our ladder. I might be, my toes might be in the yellow zone, but we're okay. Even this can help me show up differently. I will do this one. If y'all ever see me out in public, you're gonna know my secret. If I'm standing in line and I'm like about to lose it, I'm doing this. Probably also, so another one of my favorites is, when you have a baby on your hip and you rock back and forth, that, but like shake your hands a little bit. For me, because it's really hard for me to do the breath work before I've kind of gotten out, because I'm a fighter, not a fleer. And so I need to get some of that angsty energy out before I can do the calming stuff. So also telling on myself, if I have a really hard session before I go get my next client, I'm doing like 20 jumping jacks in my office, and then my body's ready to sit in the space with whoever my next person is. So the more you pay attention to your body, what is happening, where is your nervous system, do you need some movement, do you need some breath work, do you need to be held, we feel more in control. When we feel more in control, our brains are wired for connection. More people like that out in the world changes the world.
And for kiddos, we have dance parties or get the wiggles out, kind of just what Jen did, but on steroids. They think it's fun, and it helps also just get their energy out, but it's helping calm their nervous system, and they don't even know it. So you can trick them. So we have dance parties all the time, and they just think, I like to dance, but I'm like, this is going to help you go to sleep so I can go to sleep. So it's a 2-for-1.
I was going to say, one of my little tricks that I like to use often and in between clients is just kind self-talk. You know, it's so easy to get stuck in our head and to feel all of that fear and just feel very overwhelmed. So just that gentle reminder, especially us as parents, you know how to kind of tap into what would you say to your younger one, or when your kids were little, or whatever the case was, what would you say to them? And practice saying some of those kind things to yourself. That also can just really help us get our focus back and really just calm the nervous system. I do it often.
Doesn't she have the calmest voice ever?
Yeah. If I spoke calmly to myself, I'd be like, shut up.
Yeah, you got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
All right. So feeling hopeless, which makes perfect sense. That's where we really, we want to take care of ourselves, but the way we make meaning is by getting involved. So finding somewhere. I know Laura was sharing there's a rally on Saturday that's Mother's Day.
Yeah. What?
About Mother's Day of Action. Okay. Regarding gun control. If that's your thing, do that. That's how we get ourselves out of that place of hopeless, helpless, is by taking action. That action may simply be you go home tonight and you have a different conversation with the people in your house, or you have a different way of caring for yourself. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be big. Start little and then grow that. Let's see, concerns when I go to the grocery store, school, church, places where there have been shootings in the past. Again, your brain's doing what it's supposed to do, right? It's been taught that those things carry threat to life. So what I was talking about earlier on, when we were down by the mall, have those conversations with yourself. I'm driving there. What does my body need? I get to the parking lot. Scan the parking lot. I mean, for right now, I'm going to be doing that. Do I see anything that sets off my threat detection system right now? Or is it simply that I am in the parking lot of a store? I'm going to scan. I'm going to take that next step. I'm going to check in. I'm going to take that next step. The more I'm doing that, I'm communicating to my body, I got you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm also changing what my brain believes about that place every time I do that. I'm teaching my brain, was a threat, not a threat today. Which is what you guys hear a lot. Everyone hears a lot about staying in the present. Am I unsafe right now? If I were to ask, would anyone in this room say right now that they are not safe? Check in with yourself. Sitting in that parking lot. Right now, in this moment, do I see anything that threatens my safety? The more I do that, I'm changing how my brain views that location.
And I would add, depending on the intensity and the context of this too, it's also okay to modify your behavior and avoid some of these places right now if that is what you need to do. We don't want to become hermits and reclusive, because that's showing that we're getting stuck, right? That's a different situation. But if that's what people need to do right now in order to take care of where they're at or their families, do it. As long as, again, it's not harming you or anyone else, do the thing.
All right, I want to be respectful of y'all's time. Preston, will you put up the last little graphic? So I absolutely love this quote. I use it a lot because we are changed by the things that we experience. And some of that change is, going to be beautiful and inspiring and create passionate beings. Loss can make us brave. If we do the things that we've been talking about doing tonight, loss can make us brave and we can affect change. And that is our hope, that everyone in this room will leave a little bit differently than when you came in, a little bit more equipped, a little bit kinder to yourselves, and that you then influence those around you in that same way. So we are, again, honored to have spent time with you all tonight. We'll hang out. If you have questions or want to clarify anything, please, we're very approachable. But we love this community too, and it's people like you that give us hope. So thank you for being here.